You won't believe this. China is trying to crush the economy of the United States. Today, we have some interesting news to share about the US dollar and its competition with the Chinese currency, the yuan. It looks like the dollar's reign as the world's dominant currency is ending, and China is playing a big part in that. You see, the US promised its citizens that nothing would be able to dethrone the dollar. But we have some surprising news for you. China has been working hard to make the yuan a stronger and more influential currency on the global stage. They've been selling off a lot of their holdings of US Treasuries, which are like IOUs from the US government. And this has given the dollar quite a shock. Now, you might be wondering how this will affect the US economy in general. Well, let's find out together. But before we dive into that, we would love for you to take out a second and hit the like button if you this type of content. If you want to learn about the moves China is making to become world power, then this is the channel. In this video, we'll discuss how China selling US Treasuries is causing the dollar to decline even further. We'll also talk about how China is strengthening the status of its currency, the yuan. Make sure to watch the entire video to find out if the US will be able to regain its dominance in the world of currencies. Alright, let's get started. The battle between the dollar and the yuan is really weakening the US dollar, and we can already see the impacts. The US financial system is facing a crisis, as China works hard to make the yuan even stronger every day. Recently, Chinese investors sold a lot of US bonds and stocks, which is the highest amount in 4 years. This has made people speculate that China might be preparing to protect its currency and weaken the dollar. In August alone, Chinese investors sold a whopping $21.2 billion worth of US bonds and American company stocks. That's a huge amount. On top of that, Chinese investors have also reduced their holdings in agency debt. All of this is happening while the value of the yuan is rising against the US dollar, and the dollar itself has reached its lowest point since November. In response to this decline, the Chinese government has instructed its state-owned banks to get more involved in the currency market. Now, some people are wondering why China is selling off so many US securities. While it's not uncommon for investors to sell bonds and stocks, the sheer size of these transactions is raising eyebrows. Some experts think that China might be strategically selling these assets to gather more financial reserves, which they can then use to protect the value of the yuan and make the US dollar weaker. And guess what? It is working. The relationship between the yuan and the US dollar is really important because both currencies have a big impact on global trade and financial stability. A stronger yuan can make Chinese exports more competitive on the international market, while a weaker US dollar can have implications for the stability of the global economy. So, what does it mean for the US? Well, it's a bit complicated, but let's break it down. When China sells US Treasuries, it can cause a few things to happen. One thing is that interest rates might go up. Interest rates are like extra money you have to pay when you borrow money. If China sells a lot of US Treasuries, it can make fewer people want to buy them. When there's less demand, the prices go down and the interest rates go up. That means it can become more expensive for the US government to borrow money. And it's not just the government that's affected. When interest rates go up, it can also make it more costly for businesses and individuals to borrow money. This can impact how much we pay for things like loans and mortgages. So if China keeps selling US Treasuries, it can have a ripple effect on the whole of the US economy and make borrowing money more expensive for everyone. Another thing to consider is the value of the US dollar. China holds a lot of US Treasuries, which are like IOUs issued by the US government. When China sells these treasuries, it means they're getting rid of some of their US debt. But this can make the value of the US dollar go down. That means $1 US might not be worth as much as it used to be. When the US dollar loses value, it can lead to inflation, which means things can become more expensive. If you like buying products from other countries, you might have to pay more for them because it takes more dollars to buy the same things. It can also affect companies that import goods or have business in other countries. They might have to raise prices to cover their increased costs. Oh, and here's an interesting thing. China is also selling US Treasuries to strengthen its own currency, the yuan. When the yuan gets stronger, it means that Chinese products become more expensive for people in other countries. So, if you like buying things from China, you might have to pay more for them too. All of these changes happening in the world of money can have a big impact on the United States. It's a bit like a puzzle, and we'll have to keep an eye on how things unfold. It's definitely an important topic to understand because it affects our everyday lives. Now, the US used to think that China could never challenge the dollar's top spot. But things are changing. The yuan's value has been going up, and that means it's starting to play a bigger role in international trade and finance. The dollar's dominance isn't as certain as it used to be. Now, imagine if the yuan becomes the new king of currencies. How cool would that be? It could have a big impact on the world. People might start using the yuan more for their international deals, and it could change the way countries do business with each other. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. But here's the thing, will China let the US surpass the yuan now? That's a big question. China is determined to make its currency a major player, so it might not step aside easily. It's like a competition between the US and China to see who will come out on top. If you loved this video and want to see more awesome content like this, be sure to hit that like button.